Hello and welcome to the GAMEOLOGY podcast, episode 41. We're talking about the good, the bad, and the Super Mario Bros. 2. I am one of your permanent hosts, Matthew Falva, and I'm joined by...
Attila Gabriel Branitzky.
All right, Attila, Mario 2. A little bit of backstory with it. Originally released in America, October 1988. It was originally a prototype for a vertical scrolling two-player co-op game where you'd be throwing your partner and items in a way to sort of make your way up, but they couldn't find a way to make it really fun. Then they decided to make it a tie-in with Fuji Television, the Tech Expo, and each character was going to represent the mascots and the theme. This is when Miyamoto joined development, and he actually worked more with this game than he did on Mario 2, which we call the Lost Levels. And Koji Kondo, the famed Mario composer, composed the soundtrack. This was they originally put this out in America because they thought that Mario 2 The Lost Levels would be too difficult for stupid idiot North Americans. So going back to this game, what did you think? Did you have any initial thoughts on it?
I mean, it's definitely like most people kind of have this knee-jerk reaction to like, oh, it's the Mario game that isn't really a Mario game. It's just I believe, if I'm not butchering the pronunciation on this, it was released originally as Yume Kojo Doki Doki Panic in Japan.
Hi.
And the outside of Japan, what we know as Mario Brothers 2 is known as Super Mario USA, just because it was released for like North American audiences who, as you said, were playtesting indicated that North American audiences would find the original Super Mario Bros. 2 too difficult to
and
play.
It is ridiculously, that is how it's known around here. That's the first thing you come up with because it is very, very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, that nowadays, though, that's got nothing on some of the junk that people are kicking out of Mario Maker.
Absolutely.
It's one of the things I always tell kids at camp is that it's not hard to make a difficult level, it's hard to make a fun level.
Absolutely. I mean, that's like what they were saying. They came up with the idea of this vertical scroller, but they just couldn't make it fun. And we do see that's one of the biggest differences in this game compared to the first one. And I would call this a Mario game, and that's why I wanted to say that Miyamoto did work on this and Koji Kondo because the mechanics feel pretty close to Mario in terms of like the jumping and the game feel of it. A lot of the enemies that they introduced in this became Mario staples later on. But I think it's what it did differently that was so important. The vertical scrolling and the secrets, the doors into different rooms, and going down into different worlds definitely set this apart from the first Mario. And then just sort of the detailed sprites and the backgrounds. It definitely felt more like you were jumping into a storybook than the first game.
Right. Well, I think when the game came out, people must have not exactly known what to make of it. I mean, Zelda, the first Legend of Zelda game to come out on NES, and then follow that up with Zelda 2.
Yeah,
those are drastically different games.
Absolutely.
So maybe people just sort of looked at this and was like, okay, well, this is different, but it's still a game where you run around and jump, and there's Mario and Luigi, and oh, okay, cool, you can actually play as the princess this time, and she has this awesome floaty jump ability that makes the game easier as a trade-off against her power and speed stats, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking that up, and Mario, they say, is the all-rounder. Toad is faster and can pick things up fast, which is very, very important when you're trying to collect coins in the when you drop a potion, you go to that nighttime level. The more coins you have, the more chances you have in the slot machine at the end of the level for free lives. And this is a difficult game, and there's not a lot of lives to come by. They only start you off with 3 in the beginning. And, you know, the green mushroom-style power-ups are very, very rare. So it's all about getting those coins, kids. It's all about gambling. Getting as much as you can, and then when they did
the worst messages.
Yeah, and then take mushrooms for secret powers. Of course,
no.
There were 7 worlds, 20 different levels. I like this game every once in a while. I like to go back to it if I have a friend, especially to play through it. But it's not one that really draws me back because I find it very long, and a lot of the gameplay is go down this area. It's almost a lot like Metroid. There's a lot of vertical scrolling. There's even these kind of Metroid-type enemies that are circling around the platforms, grabbing a key and then running away from these terrifying masks and then going back. So I always felt in this game there was more of like a crushing sense of impending doom, and you're being chased a lot. It had more of a horror feel to it as opposed to when I think of Mario 1 and 3, it's a very happy, fun place to explore and everyone's smiling, whereas this game was like you were in a dream, but more like a nightmare.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, just by nature of the fact that they decided to put these key items, like you have to go find the key and then you have to go bring it to the spot where it unlocks, and then from there you can, like, that completes the level, as opposed to the only Mario you'd known up till that point was just a linear progression. Like, you just go to the right and then eventually you'll hit the end of the level. But like, this is a game without like, there's no flagpole at the end. There's just these keyholes. And right, yeah, no time limit, like, which is what gave you more time to explore the levels. And it's interesting because, like, they bring the time limit back in future Mario titles. Of course, they bring a lot of things back from this game as well. Like you mentioned, the different characters having different, like, stats and stuff. That's something we saw in Super Mario 3D World. For the Wii U, they brought back basically the same character traits with Peach and her hover jump, Toad and his, like, super speed, Luigi and his high jumping. Like, those were all traits that were essentially defined by this game. Other popular Mario characters, like the enemies especially, Shy Guys, Bob-ombs, Pokies,
cactus,
I think.
Yeah, they're called Pokies.
Yeah, and
Birdo's a popular character later
to a
on.
lesser extent. Yeah, he/she makes
That was
his
a very,
slash
very
her.
progressive character. In the manual, it said he thinks he's a girl and would dress up like a girl.
And I think Nintendo has sort of canonically stomped down on that and said, nope, Birdo's female, but whatever. And at least Birdo makes recurring appearances in the Mario Party games. It's not really, you don't see Birdo in any of the core Mario titles, not like the other characters.
No, and this is actually one of the first Marios where the character could pick things up and throw. And while in Mario 3, that became a very big element of it, we'll talk about it in the next episode, or 2 episodes from now. Throwing was such a big part of that, and now every Mario game you can pick up and throw things. But a huge difference in this one is that the first enemy you jump on thinking, yeah, that's going to kill him like Mario. Now you're riding along, which completely changes the dynamic of it. In later levels, it relies on you to get on the head of an enemy and fly across a certain level, a gap that you would never be able to clear, or ride a magic carpet ride and that kind of thing.
Right, and that's why I was interested when you said at the top of the episode, like, oh, this is a Mario game just like any other, but yet the core idea of, like, jumping and landing on enemies and killing them. But in this game, you jump, land on them, and then you, like, lift them up over your head, and then you throw them to kill other enemies. Like, that's so different from the other Mario titles. Like, it definitely has elements of the Mario DNA, well, elements of a platformer, right? And then sort of, I think that over time, because so many things were lifted from this game, we come to accept it as a Mario title. But I don't know if at the time Nintendo really thought that, obviously this is not the direction they wanted to take the Mario franchise. This was just a sort of kick something out the door, and as you said, they put, like, some extra polish on it. You mentioned I think before we started recording how they smoothed up the sound effects, and what other touches did they make?
The sound effects sound a lot better. They added a lot of backgrounds to it, where in Doki Doki Panic, when you reach the end of a level, it's just a very bland, I think, solid color screen as you're doing the slot machine level, whereas in the USA version, they created a nice background. They actually made it look like a slot machine. So they tightened up things, and the sound effects is the biggest one, because they sounded awful every time you would hit an enemy. Of course, too, on the Game Boy Advance version, the sound effects are very bad, and they added these voices that were the Game Boy Advance sound hardware at the time was not where you wanted to hear Toad screaming every time he picked something up. But if you're looking to play this game, I'd recommend the Super Nintendo version, the remake remaster. Is best, and even the original NES version it holds up just fine. That's the one that people are looking at right now in the video. Okay,
cool. Yeah, because I suppose we should at least be glad that Nintendo gave us something, as opposed to the sort of Final Fantasy situation where there were just a whole bunch of titles in a row that did not come out in the United States until years later. They finally re-released some of those games. I don't recall exactly which ones they skipped. Was it like 2, 3, and 4? And then I think 5 became
for Final Fantasy? Yeah, 2 and 3 were only in Japan. 4 became Final Fantasy 2. 5 was only in Japan, and then 6 was 3.
Okay, so I wasn't entirely incorrect that they skipped 3 titles. It's just the ones. Anyway, yeah. So it just, I think it would have been like, I don't think people would have necessarily been disappointed if they'd have gone straight from Mario 1 to Mario 3, but just in between, I don't think most people have anything against Doki Doki Panic as sort of filling in the gap between the 2 games. I don't think it's necessarily the sort of natural progression for the series, but at the same time, I don't think it was a bad game. No. If we had received like a subpar title in between, I think people would have been more frustrated with that. I don't know if I don't know how people would have reacted if they had gotten their hands on what we now know as the Lost Levels, how that would have affected the Mario like perception of the brand.
I don't think it would have been as bad as Nintendo thought, because Mario Lost Levels is not inherently a bad game. It's building upon a really great game. It's just much more difficult, and I think that already having the original, people would probably have just called it the hard one. But it's like you mentioned, how Zelda 2 Link's Awakening is so similar to this. It's a game that is just so much different, but contains a few of the linking aspects. So that's a pun, but it's just
the reason the character's named that.
What's that?
That's the reason the character's named Link.
Oh, well, there you go. Now we're learning a lot of things.
He's meant to represent like the link between 2D and 3D, the link between the past and the present, like the link between worlds. Like it's
the link putting all the Triforce pieces together. And it is so different. This is definitely the one I least want to go back to, like I said earlier, because I do find it a grind. I think that it's good. It just really doesn't hold up as much as the other ones. Whereas Mario 3, right. I still would love to go back, and I could put right up against Super Mario World in terms of the best Mario ever made. And I still find Mario 1 a fun little jaunt to go through every once in a while. Whereas Mario 2, it's like that difficult double album a band puts out, or it's just so strange, but it's not bad. It is just different,
right?
And it's very solidly good. And because they were building on top of, I think you had such great design elements that were building on top of this strange foundation, you ended up with what we got.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like there's it's earned the title of like black sheep of the franchise for a fair reason. It's definitely not like the direction we wanted to see the franchise go in, which was what, when things came around and Mario 3 came out, that was like the thing people wanted to see out of the Mario franchise. And as you said, it holds up as one of the best regarded Mario titles just of all time. So I mean,
Mario 2 sold extremely well. A lot of that is to probably to do with it being the sequel to the most well-known game of all time. I mean, it's for my girlfriend that doesn't know a thing about video games. She has played Mario games, and she knows that. I don't know what she counts as those, but it's a canonical game in. I mean, it's just a part of pop culture. I mean, Mario. I feel like we're kind of bashing it quite a bit, but it did do some really interesting things. I mean, introducing the digging mechanics, the doors to different areas, a lot of the secrets. There were so many secrets in this game. The different there's earlier on there's a choice you can make where you can go to the right and you can head towards the normal exit of the level, but you have to go through a lot more hardship. Or you can jump over a waterfall to the left. You can climb up a ladder. You have 2 bombs that are planted, and it's very tricky because the bombs are on a timer. They'll hurt you, and you need to throw them down this pit that goes down a ladder and destroy a wall. But the wall is above the ground in such a way that you have to time it so the bomb explodes in midair. And you only have 2 chances to do that. And if you can get through, then you come up to the back end of the level. You hear the boss music. You know you're on the right spot, and you walk unseen over top. And I mean, little moments like that are. It made you think that there were probably a lot more spots in this game to explore. So for somebody that wanted to take the time, and like we said, there's no time limit. That was well done, and we saw a lot of that in Mario 3 and in Super Mario World and all the Mario games beyond that.
Yeah.
So they did sort of set that trend in a way. There were some things that we saw in every Mario moving on.
Yeah, I feel like if anything, it's actually the more recent Mario games where there's still secrets, like for sure, but there's not as many like crazy secrets, I guess.
True.
It's sort of hard to describe, but like that whole scenario you just described of like going backwards on the level and holding a bomb and tossing it so the fuse goes off at just the right time. I don't feel like that's necessarily the kind, like the nature of the secrets that you encounter in today's Mario titles.
No, now
I feel
Mario
like
titles
a lot of
are
those,
just to give you a quick reward.
right, exactly. They give you a like maybe a secret star if it's a Mario 64 or Sunshine type level. It just the fact that they wove these kinds of experiences into the game, into the core game, rather than just letting them serve as a sort of skip to the end mechanic or other such secrets. Like, it's just interesting to see how it's now like finding these things is now more in line with the core experience of the game as opposed to some side attraction. Like getting through and like finding all 120 stars in Mario Galaxy, you now have to, it has to be possible to find all these things. You can't have things that are that obscure anymore because if they're now part of the core game experience, you can't have people missing out on them. So I guess, there's something gained, something lost in the progression of all these franchises, but that's definitely something that I think there's a lot of people who are especially nostalgic for that nature of secret, that kind of like, Mario 1, you jump up to the top of the screen and you can run along like where the user interface of the game is being displayed. It doesn't feel like something that, I don't know, you sort of feel like you're somewhere where you shouldn't be, almost.
Yeah, you feel like you're breaking the game in a way, but it's done intentionally, and it's not
Absolutely.
just it's not like a big celebrated reward. It's like a little wink to you from the game developer. I'm really glad they made this Mario 2. I bet you that the ideas that they explored here made Mario 3 a better title because of it. Because they were able to sort of test it out. This kind of feels like the awkward sort of teenage years where you can see what the game would eventually grow up to become, but they were able to throw a lot of ideas at the wall, and maybe because it wasn't Miyamoto's baby to begin with, he was able to just go a little bit crazy with it and then take that inspiration moving forward, take what worked, and then also go back and embrace what Mario was originally. With the third one. So, I mean, I'm glad it exists. I still think it's worth a play for people to go back to, and it's just nowhere near to the staying power of most of the other franchises.
Games that came sort of before and after it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll usually say that I would prefer most 2D Marios to the 3D ones, but Mario 2, when I was going back to play this, I just found it a bit frustrating. Also, it has a terrible slowdown. We're looking at a moment here where we have snakes jumping out of vases, a cactus guy, and when those snakes shoot their little black pellets, the whole game comes to a standstill.
Yeah, there's just a few too many moving objects on screen at a time.
Yeah, so it's solid, it's good, it's not up to that same standard that we've come to expect from almost every other Mario game. That's about all I really have to say on it, other than, there was something I noticed I hadn't noticed before, is that in the very first first moment, there is that slight shadow behind some of the environmental objects, which is something that we saw in Mario 3, where Mario 3 was basically a play, where this was all scenery that you saw shadow because that was sort of the backstage and the backdrop. So it was that was a neat little moment. I wonder whose idea was to put that in, and then if that inspired Mario 3.
Yeah. Well, it's thanks for joining us for this relatively shorter episode of Gameology. If you'd like something to supplement your experience with, you can leave that in. Do check out. I produced a video supplement to Gameology talking about the tile sets of Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, something that really had to be visual. So I recorded that one solo, and it's up on my YouTube channel. You can find that at, let's see, my YouTube channel is called Bluish Green Productions. Maybe we'll post a link to it in the show notes if you're interested in checking out some interesting compression and just otherwise artistic tricks that they used to create the tile sets for Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire. And really, if you're just interested in game art in general, it's worth checking out.
Sounds good. I don't have anything cool like that, but I did put up a bunch of videos from every E3 conference. I'll have a bunch of coverage on there. But you can find me on Twitter at GameThinkTalk and my writing at a90skid.com. And Attila?
You can follow me on Twitter at BluishGreenPro or my personal profile, Attila Gabriel. And you can also check me out on my website, bluishgreenproductions.com, where you can submit questions and that we will answer on the show in future.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye for now.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.